Hey everybody, it's Greg from Bell's Backyard. So it's the beginning of the gardening season. Now all the questions start happening for the beginner gardeners that are out there. Where do I put my garden? What's my soil composition? How does it drain? How do I fix it? When do I plant? What do I plant? Well, what kind of amendment should I use? What kind of fertilizer should I use? What plant should I plant? When should I plant my plants? What do seedlings look like? Should I use different types of plants over here and different types of plants over there? I am in the same boat that you are. So Bell's Backyard moved from zone 9B to zone 8B. Bear with me here for just a minute and we'll get right into what we're going to discuss today. So what I decided to do was look around and get as much information as I possibly could, because this is all new. This environment is all new to me. Well, the thing was, everything was so stinking confusing. All I want to do and focus on this year is getting that crop or that plot of land right there, grow vegetables onto it, learn the environment, learn what to plant, and then expand it later on. But it was very confusing. It was so complicated. I decided to do a series of videos, and it's going to be the time-starved gardener basic gardening techniques. And we're going to go week by week what I'm going to use, and you can give me feedback into the comments. We're going to share our comments, our successes and our failures together. On Friday, you're going to see there's going to be a video of what you need to do for that week. And then on Wednesday, we're going to answer any of your questions that you have that you put into the comment section below. So it's kind of important, if you're going to go along on this journey, hit the subscribe button, and please feel free to use any comments that you want down onto the bottom. If it's a specific comment for you, I'll go ahead and answer you directly. If it's a general comment, that's what we're going to discuss on Monday. That's what we're going to discuss on Wednesday. All right, so it's week number one. What I'm going to do is I need to find the 3 basic things that's going to make my garden successful. That's going to be the location of my garden, the drainage of my soil, and also the pH of my soil. So the first thing we're going to do, we need to find the good location. Now what I use, you guys can put this on pause here in just a second if you're following right along. I use an app. It's a free app. You can find it in your app store, and it's called Sun's Path. Now download that app. At the same time, you're going to want to share your location while you're using the app. Now I can take and find out exactly where the sun's going to be going and how much sunlight I'm getting from this spot right here by just going in and putting in the date. All right, we want to find out the middle of our growing season. For me, it's going to be about March the 20th. So I've loaded that into my phone, and then on the top right hand side I can hit the AR button and it overlays my camera with the path of the sun. So if I'm staring at my camera, I know that at March 20th at 8 o'clock in the morning, the sun's going to be coming over that tree line there, and I can follow it over and I can see that I am going to have shade on this particular spot at 6 o'clock, maybe 6:10. That's going to give me it's going to give me 14 hours of sun. So I'm going to have plenty of sun that's going to be right here. Did I do that math right? I think I did. So it's going to give me plenty of sun. Now, if you're in a small container garden, or if you're in your backyard and it looks like you're not going to get enough from where you're standing, move 6 feet, left or right, backwards or forwards, and check to see how that affects it. You're going to see that you're going to be able to pick up a couple hours, or you're going to be able to reduce it a couple hours based off of how you want to grow. So use the Sun's Path, find your location. So here, I'm good. Now let's go on to step number 2, and that's going to be soil drainage. Now, why is soil drainage so important? Well, most vegetables will want a damp soil, but not a wet soil. So we need to figure out what that is. There's a very simple test, and we're going to do that right now. So come on back over here where I'm going to start my garden, and I'll show you exactly how I check it. All you're going to need is a water hose, a 5-gallon bucket, and your garden shovel. All right, kind of a step-by-step. So what I'm going to do, in my 5-gallon bucket, I have it filled with some water right here. I'm just going to take and I'm going to create a hole about the size of a 5-gallon bucket. And then I'm going to take the first 2 inches of soil off. All right, the reason why I'm doing that is I want to get all of that debris out of there. So we got the first 2 inches. We're going to make 2 piles. The first pile is going to be over here off to the side. That's your first 2 inches. Now for the next 12 inches, what we're going to do is we're going to dig this out and we're going to set it into a separate pile. The reason why I want to do that is I'm going to use this later on for the next test, which is going to be the soil composition and what the pH is. And man, I can tell you this stuff is already like smoking hot. So we're going to dig all the way down. We're going to get our hole down to about 12 inches. And then I've got my hole dug. Now for speed, I already have one dug over here for you to take a look at, and let's go over to it. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to fill this hole up to the top Once you get it filled up, take a look at what time it is. The magic number that we're looking for is going to be 10 minutes. If it drains out faster than 10 minutes, then you're going to have a porous, sandy soil. If it's between, let's say, 8 to 12 minutes, you're going to be okay. You're not going to have to add any amendments to help with the drainage part. Now, if it takes longer than 12 minutes, 15 minutes, then you're going to have a slow draining soil. Now, I've already done this. Now, this one right here, this hole, took about 2.5 to 3 hours for it to drain down. So I know that I have a very poor draining soil. So now that we've identified it, let's figure out how to fix it. Right, if that hole drained down in 8 to 12 minutes, congratulations, you're gonna have a good draining soil. So just go ahead and move on to the next section so I'm not wasting your time. If you have a fast draining or a slow draining soil, the solution's simple. It's compost, compost, compost. But there's two different types of compost that we wanna use. With your fast draining soils, I want to use a compost that's going to have the ability to retain moisture and retain those nutrients, and I want to provide some kind of structure to the soil. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix a 50% aged cow manure and a 50% peat moss, put that into a mixture, and I'm going to put that onto my bed. How much we're going to use, I'm going to go over here in just a second. If you have a slow draining soil like I have here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something a little different than you would find at a garden store. I have always used Kellogg's organic raised garden bed. It has very large chunks in it. It is very porous. It works incredibly well. But in this particular situation here, I'm going to use the raised garden bed mixture in my garden rows. Now, how much are we going to put in there? Well, we're going to start with 3 inches. Now, the way that I'm going to determine how much I'm going to need. So we need to figure out how many cubic feet that's going to be. So I will take the width of my garden rows, which is going to be 30 inches wide for me. That's 2.5 feet. So I'm going to take 2.5 and I'm going to multiply that by the length of my garden row, which is going to be 15. Then I'm going to take that and multiply it by 0.25, and that's going to give me the cubic feet that I am going to need to put on top of my soil to start the amendment process. You can do the same thing with whatever you're going to be using, whether you're doing the whole garden bed or if you're just going to be doing that row. All right, remember that second pile that we made when we were digging our hole to check for the drainage of our soil? Now's where we're going to use this. So I'm going to get just a little bit of that. I'm going to bring this over to the table so that you can see it. And we're going to do a simple way of determining the pH and also the composition of our soil. So I'm going to take water and I'm going to put it into my soil and kind of make it sort of soupy a little bit. Now I'm going to be checking with this. I'm going to be checking to see if it is acidic. And the way that I do that is I'm going to take some baking soda. I took this out of my wife's kitchen, so she's probably going to yell at me for it. And I'm just going to sprinkle a bunch of baking soda in there. I'm just going to kind of mix it up. Okay. Now, and we're going to let that sit. You don't have to, it's not an exact measurement. And we're just going to see if that thing starts to bubble. If it starts to bubble, that means that my pH in my soil is acidic and I'm going to need to raise it. The other thing you can do is if your soil's basic, I got too much of that in there. If your soil's basic, is we are going to take just your regular vinegar and we're going to pour the vinegar directly on top of the soil. It doesn't need to be moistened. And you're just going to see if it bubbles. Now, with this one, I can already see this. I already know what it is actually, but with this one, I can start to see that there is some white bubbles and it's starting to bubble. Over here, when I put the vinegar into it, didn't really do much of anything. So I know that my pH is going to be a little on the low side. Now, if it starts to bubble rapidly, that means you have either a high pH or you have a very, very low pH, depending on which one's bubbling. If it takes a minute for it to start bubbling, then you're pretty close, but you still need to worry about the adjustments. Now, there is a device that you can buy if you want to get specific on it. It's an electronic device. I'll show a picture of it that's here. I have one at the house, and it seems to be relatively accurate, where I will take this same mixture, just moisten it up. I can turn it on, and in a matter of a minute or so, it's going to tell me exactly where my pH is. So, but if you don't have that at the house and you don't want to spend the extra 15 bucks for it, you can just test it this way. Now, the type of amendments that I'm going to use, if I'm going to have a acidic soil like I've got here, then I am going to use a lime. Now, the lime that we want to use is going to be a fast acting lime. So follow the directions on that bag. Now remember, we're doing this 2 to 3 weeks before we're planting our plants. So it has a time for us to adjust or to raise that pH up. Same way with the other side. Now to lower the pH, What I like to do is I use Epsoma, a fast-acting lime. It says it's for hydrangeas, but it actually works relatively well. I'm confident in how the product works, and it doesn't take an awful lot. So follow the directions that are on the bag based off of the square footage that you're going to be using, and I think you're going to be fine. So let's recap the 3 things that we just covered and what we're going to need to get in order to get ready for the second week, and that's week number 2. Now let's just review what I did. I know the location of my garden. I know that my soil, how it's going to drain. I know what amendments I'm going to need to put into it, and I also know the pH of my soil. For me, I have a very slow draining soil, and I have a very low pH in my garden. So I'm going to need to adjust that. So now we need to go out and get the materials that we're going to need for week number 2. So week number 2 is going to be, how do we apply those amendments? We're also going to look at how we're going to lay our garden out. We're going to look at what kind of seeds we're going to grow, what kind of plants we're going to grow. So keep that in mind as you're going through the garden center. Let's get the materials that we need, and I will see you on the next video.